So let's move on to the United States Revenue Cutter Service, which became the U.S. Coast Guard. It was established by an act of Congress in 1790, and this was upon the recommendation of Alexander Hamilton. And it would serve as an armed customs service to enforce tariffs, which at that point was a very important source of revenue for the new nation. So as time passed, the service of the revenue cutters gradually increased in use, especially in military actions. The revenue cutters could be called upon when the U.S. Navy was short of ships. So they operated across the centuries, so in the War of 1812, and then in counter-piracy measures in the Caribbean after that. They assisted in the American-Mexican War, and of course during the Civil War. In the latter, the cutter Harriet Lane was the one that fired the first naval shots of the war in an attempt to relieve the besieged Fort Sumter. So besides their duties in war, the revenue cutters could be called upon for search and rescue missions. In 1884, two ships, the Thetis, which you see on the left, and the Bear, went north to locate the Greeley expedition. Unfortunately, by the time they got there, they only found 6 survivors left. These included Adolphus Greely, the leader of the expedition. This was out of the total of 25 crew, was all that they found when they arrived at Upernavik, Greenland, where they were camped. And on the right-hand side, that's not the original crew, that's the entire crew of the Thetis and the Bear and the 6 survivors. And if you can see it on there, number 22 is Greeley. So it's Portsmouth. The first U.S. Coast Guard station would have been one of the life-saving stations, and this was at Jerry Point. Possibly they're looking at Jaffrey Point, or it was renamed as Jaffrey Point, over on the New Hampshire side. So in 1879, there's an annual report that citizens of the area submitted as a petition, asking for the establishment of a station at the eastern entrance of Portsmouth Harbor. There have been numerous severe disasters in the vicinity, and they recommended a station there. So this was authorized soon after, and it was completed, equipped, and placed into operation in 1888. Almost immediately afterwards, the crew at the station rescued 4 of the crew members off of the schooner Oliver Dyer that had wrecked on the rocks right next to the station. And for this, they received a gold medal award. Then, in 1908, the station was moved, so it was taken from that spot on the New Hampshire side and shifted over to the Maine side on the small island of Wood Island, which is pictured here. It was connected by a causeway to the mainland at some point, perhaps not right away, and you can see there in the photo, this is showing where the ramps lead out from the boathouses to be able to take their boat down into the ocean to go out towards the ship that's wrecked. So as you know, in 1915, the service was merged to the life-saving service together with the revenue cutter service to become the U.S. Coast Guard. So as the established station in the area, Wood Island, continued until World War I and World War II mixed things up with which parts of military stations were where. However, eventually in 1965, the Coast Guard moved to the area around Fort Constitution, which had been rebuilt so long ago in 1808 to protect the nearby Portsmouth Naval Yard. So in conclusion, it was that combination in 1915 to create the Coast Guard that took in the life-saving service and the revenue cutters, along with the lighthouse service and also the navigation and steamboat inspection service that we heard of with the ferry boat Kittery inspecting the ship before it could come into service, crossing the Piscataqua. So initially, shoreside service was only for the rescues of that area, and the ships were more there for the enforcing of tariffs, joining military actions, but eventually was all combined to be part of search and rescue programs. The U.S. Coast Guard has a long history of sail training, so even as ships turned into steam and fuel-powered ships, this continued. Their current training ship, the U.S. Coast Guard cutter Eagle, shown here, takes cadets out each summer. This ship was originally a German ship and captured in World War II, and the U.S. government had it refit for the Coast Guard. This summer, once again, the tall ships are coming into Portsmouth, but I do not believe that the Eagle will be one of that fleet. I think it's the Oliver Hazard Perry that's the large ship coming in. Up next, we'll have a look at tourism and leisure at sea.